Lottie, thanks for doing this. Maybe just to kick us off, could you give us a quick background of like your academic background, your career, like progression? Maybe like start off from, you know, the A levels you picked, why you picked them, and then the university course and things like that.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of kind of what I did at school and university, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. So I kind of just went for the subjects that I liked the most, without kind of really cutting anything off. So for A level, I did history, French, and maths.
Okay.
And then at university, I did history and French. So I was quite interested in writing. I had the idea of potentially going into journalism, and was also really interested in business. So I think with kind of doing those subjects, I was quite well rounded. I could do something that I really
Interesting.
enjoyed, but I wasn't limited.
Interesting that you went and did audit and things, and you were interested in business, but you didn't pick maths or for A level, for like university course. You did very like history and French
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. I mean, I think that like they were the subjects that I genuinely enjoyed, and I
Mm.
think like history, it sounds like you're just like learning about history, but there's like a lot of skills that you learn in doing that. Like you learn how to construct a good argument, how to write well,
Mm,
how to
mm.
communicate, which I think are like really important skills for any career that you go into.
Yeah, yeah.
So even if it sounds like unusual, I think it actually like really helped me in my career after. And I think when I was
Okay.
applying for jobs, like
Yeah.
people could kind of see those things.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And then I guess where in the process did you think, okay, audit is probably the career I want to go to, or did you think something else is the career, but audit is a good stepping stone to get there?
Um, so while I was at university, I did a 4-year degree because I did a year abroad in France. I came back from France for my after my third year, and was starting to think about what I wanted to do when I graduated. So I was really
Mm.
open-minded.
Yeah.
I had been thinking of going into journalism, but at that point, I was maybe kind of veering away from that a little bit. And I had a friend that had just done the summer internship at
Okay.
KPMG,
Okay.
and she loved it. Actually, she's, I mean, all these years later, she's actually still there. She just like loves KPMG. So she really, really sold it to me. And I was like, why not just apply? It's a summer internship. It's a couple of months, get some good
Yeah.
work experience, just see what it's like, earn a bit of money as well. I'm just going to go for it. So I applied for the summer internship. So that was the summer before I graduated. So I still went back to university for a year afterwards.
Okay.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And,
So
and
decided to apply for the graduate program.
did you automatically go from summer internship to graduate program, or do you have to like reapply again?
So how it worked then, I'm not sure if it's still the same now, was that in order to apply to the summer internship, you went through the exact same process that you go through to apply for the graduate scheme,
Okay.
just without the final interview at the end. So you do all of that, you get onto the summer internship. If you kind of like do well in the summer internship, or you kind of perform like in line with expectations, you get a partner interview at the end of that internship. So it's just
Okay.
one interview to then get the job for the following year. And yeah,
Okay.
that was just really nice because it meant going into my final year of university,
Got the job
I
sorted.
had that job lined up. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that says I didn't explore enough kind of other options, but no, but for me at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do.
So I guess one question, like for students and things who are thinking about audit and stuff, like spring weeks are hot now, like, and people are all trying to get on them. Like, what do you think? You obviously you weren't aware of spring weeks. You didn't apply for
I,
them.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you know what it is now?
No, no, you should have known.
So spring weeks are basically like in the year before the summer internship, you applied to do like 1 or 2 weeks at KPMG or investment bank or law firm in spring, and then you go from that and you get the summer internship, and you go from that, you get the graduate role. So it's like that. It's a step before.
Okay, that makes sense. No, yeah, maybe I've encountered people doing that.
Okay.
I mean, like, great because it's all getting your foot in the door. It's all just like getting you some experience of what it's
Yeah.
like. What I
Yeah.
would
Yeah. Yeah.
say is like, I mean, I'm sure it's beneficial, but I still would do the benefit of the summer internship is you're there for 2 months.
Mm,
You actually have enough time to get like started on a project and
mm.
actually kind of like really get involved in work. Whereas
Yeah.
I would say, um, like in a few weeks, it's probably quite difficult to
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure.
So yeah, maybe it's good to do both.
Okay, a question that I'm sure a lot of people have, and then I'll actually get onto actual like what audit teams do. But for someone who did history and French, like what was it that you? Because I would have thought you'd have to have a slightly more quantitative background to go into like audit and stuff. Like, what do you think was it that helped you get into like some internships and stuff at someone like KPMG?
Well, so I guess I did have the quant from the A-level maths.
Yeah.
So I think that helped.
Mhm.
I think they did have like a certain requirements in terms of your school education
Okay.
to have that quant bit. And then, I mean, a lot of audit, like, of course, it's very numerical, but it's also like asking questions and going and
Okay.
talking to people and understanding the business. So I think just like being kind of like switched on and able to communicate well is like as important as being able to understand the numbers.
Okay.
Um,
Were you quite commercially aware then, as a second and third year student?
I think I was like aware of what was going on in the news. Like
Okay.
I come from a family of journalists. I've always been like
Okay.
obsessed with the news. I would always be like aware of what was going on in the newspapers. I wouldn't
Okay.
say that I was like had like a really good business understanding, but if I don't know, like if something was happening in the news, I'd be aware of that. And
You
of
were.
course, that's the sort of thing that you would prepare for an interview
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Clear. 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 Okay. So perfect. So A levels, university, got into KPMG, some internship in the graduate role. Could you maybe just explain, because it's not something I'm completely clear on either, is like, what do audit teams actually do? And yeah, is it kind of like a project-based role? Is it, yeah, can you just maybe, because like in asset management stuff, it's very generalist. You're looking at different kind of companies. For you, is it you're looking at one company doing audit for them? How does it work?
So basically, well, if I start from the position of the company, which would be like the client of an audit firm like KPMG, so
Yeah.
they have a legal requirement to publish certain information, like financial and non-financial,
Yeah.
and the requirements really vary depending on like the size of the company, whether they're listed, and like lots of other things.
Yeah.
But basically, the role of the auditor is to sign off on that information.
Okay.
So once you're a company of a certain size or a certain type,
Yeah.
you have to publish certain information, and then
Yeah.
you also are required to get it audited. So what the
Okay.
auditors are going in and doing is actually checking that what you're saying are your financial results, or it can also be like more qualitative stuff as well. Like
Okay.
you're basically signing off that you've audited that information that's being published.
Okay. So let's, I don't know, let's say a supermarket like Tesco or something. I've always thought, how could you audit like their top line? How could you audit their revenues? Like, are you going through every receipt? Like, how can you
No,
audit their top line?
no. So that I mean, it would just be impossible to check
Yeah.
everything. But so there's like all sorts of different tests that are done. So big companies will have kind of like controls in place to make sure that kind of things are handled properly. So I don't know, like saying that the payroll has to be signed off by two different people, or that like big cash transactions have to be monitored by a certain number of people. So
Okay.
one thing that auditors do is they'll first of all they'll kind of understand that the controls are in place and assess
Okay.
that they are sort of adequate for the purpose,
Okay.
and then they'll test. So they'll pick, say there's a control that's done 12 times in a year, they'll
Mm.
maybe just check, like pick two random times and just check that it was done properly. So that's one way of kind of like getting some idea of like things that are kind of being done properly. And the
Mm.
other thing is actually like the example that you mentioned with like the revenue,
Yeah.
um, you wouldn't check every single receipt, but what you do is maybe get like a listing of all of the transactions. And
Mm.
then, I mean, this is how it was done when I was there. It's probably like way more advanced now. Like they're doing so much more with like data analytics and things like that. And
Really?
that was
Okay.
kind of starting when I was there. But
Okay.
again, you would sample, just pick a certain sample.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then
Interesting.
test those. And then there's all sorts of kind of like statistical extrapolation that is done. I mean, I'm sure it's
Okay.
really advanced now as well.
Okay.
And then,
Okay.
so that's kind of the two like ways in the detail. And then the other thing is just looking at a top level. Like you tend to, again, the requirements change depending on like the type of company and the country. But you have to rotate auditors like every few years. It really
Mm.
varies the number of years. So but when you're an auditor of the company, you really have to understand the business. So it also look kind of like high level, like do their results make sense, and kind of do a lot of documentation on kind of explaining why numbers are the way they are as well. So it's actually a really great job to do to kind of understand how
A business
companies
works.
work.
Yeah.
I get to look at like a lot of different businesses as well, at just like
So,
a
so,
slightly
so
higher.
you would look at one client for a few months and move on to another client, or how would it work?
So it really varies on like depending on the size of the client. So I worked in the consumer markets department.
Okay.
So in London, sorry, I've got the sun right in my face. um, in London, because it's the a bigger office, everyone is split up into kind of departments depending on industry.
Okay.
Whereas if you go into like a smaller office in like another city in the UK, it might be that you do kind of all different types of industries because it's a smaller
Okay.
team.
Okay.
But in London, I was in the consumer markets team. So I had like one absolutely huge client that took up like loads of time throughout the year,
Okay.
because they had loads of kind of like reporting requirements, like at least 4 times a year, and we just
Yeah.
spend a
Yeah.
lot of time. And then for like smaller clients, I might just be like working on them for a few weeks here and there.
Okay.
It really varies depending on the size. But most people will have at least like a few clients that they're looking after.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Um, we can cut this bit out if you want. Okay, Lottie. But it's an interesting, I guess, a topical thing at the moment is Silicon Valley Bank. They were audited, I think, the day before, 2 days before, like all the news came out about the bankruptcy. And like, I mean, you only hear about the bad stuff, obviously, in the news, but like,
Yeah.
there are several like companies that go bankrupt or X, Y, Z, and they've just been audited like a week or two before. Like, is that because you can't be completely certain? Like, you are looking at a sample and then kind of extrapolating. Is that why? Or yeah,
Yeah, I think it probably varies. It probably is partly that because, yeah, I mean, you're doing a kind of like reasonable check.
mm.
You can't look at everything. I mean, you'd literally be there for years.
Yeah.
I think it's because of that. And I think the other thing is that often with things like this, it's like there are instances of fraud as well. And obviously, as an
Mm.
auditor, like you're really looking out for that. But if
Mm.
someone is doing something fraudulently, like they're going to be trying really hard to hide it.
Yeah.
So when you have so much to look at,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, if someone's kind of doing it well and not getting caught,
Yeah.
then it can be really, really difficult. I mean, like there are kind of professional bodies that will then go and like look at the auditor and make sure that they've done everything that they should have done as well.
Yeah.
Like there are really kind of, it's not like the auditor just decides how they're going to audit. Like there's really clear kind of guidelines and regulations in place about how you're supposed to audit.
Okay. Clear. And that's fairly, I guess, standard across the big four.
Yeah.
Okay, clear. Perfect. That's super helpful, Lottie. That's actually helped my understanding as well. Okay, but then you go from KPMG. You're there for how many? 3 years? 4 years?
I was there for 3 years. So at KPMG, this is maybe I should explain this because it makes sense why I went from history and French to accounting. Like as part of the program I did at KPMG, they just like completely trained me up as an accountant.
Yep.
So I went from knowing nothing about accounting to being a fully qualified accountant.
You did the ACA
So
or ACCA?
I did the ACA, yeah, alongside working for those 3 years. So to get the ACA, I needed like my 3 years of work experience signed off by KPMG. So I did that with them, and then left once I was qualified.
And I mean, being strong enough to do like A-level maths and stuff is enough to do like the accounting qualifications, and they help you in that process and stuff.
Oh yeah, and also I mean, like I would say that A-level maths is like a lot more mathematical than accounting is. I mean, accounting it's kind of the clue is in the name. Like it's like a lot of adding up and
And just
I
dividing
mean,
margins and stuff. Yeah.
well, yeah, exactly. Like in terms of like the maths, you're not needing to do any like algebra or anything like that. I think like being kind of numerate and like like good with numbers is obviously essential.
Yeah.
But actually, yeah, you don't need to be doing really advanced maths.
Okay.
Actually, one thing that was quite helpful, I think, was I did at A-level maths. I chose statistics,
Okay.
and I almost wish that I kind of paid a bit more attention during that because I think that actually is incredibly relevant to when you're doing sampling and things like that.
Okay, perfect. So got the ACA, 3 years at KPMG. Sounds like you enjoyed it, but then you moved to finance role at Belmond.
Yeah.
Maybe talk us through that, and how does audit differ to like finance and what you're doing at Belmond?
Yeah, so after my 3 years at KPMG, I went and joined like an actual in-house finance team at
Mm.
Belmond, which is a luxury travel company. They have hotels all over the world.
Yeah.
And
So
so
this
yeah,
this career talk, this career talk is going off the back of LVMH. So Belmond is one of LVMH's brands, is it?
yeah, it was actually acquired by LVMH while I was there.
Yeah,
So when
yeah,
I joined, it was just like a standalone company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And
yeah,
then while I was there, it was put up for sale and actually bought by LVMH,
yeah.
which was
Okay.
really interesting. But yeah, in terms of the kind of difference in the job role, so kind of the really key difference is at KPMG, I was auditing what other people had done.
Mm,
So
mm.
like the finance teams within these companies would be kind of preparing the financials, and I would be reviewing them like
Yeah,
as part of a team with like a manager who would then review my work and kind of give me advice and things like that.
yeah,
Whereas when I moved to Belmond, like you're actually just doing everything. So
yeah,
you're the one
yeah,
that's preparing the financials and often like looking at things for the first time.
Mm,
And I mean the hierarchy was kind of similar, that I had like a very experienced boss who
mm.
kind of reviewed things that I did and like could give a lot of guidance, but um yeah, you feel like you're kind of doing a lot more if that makes sense. um
Yeah.
yeah, you're not reviewing, you're actually doing it.
So is the skill set and stuff fairly similar? Because I mean, at Belmont, I mean they own several hotels and trains and stuff like that, no? So like you're
Yeah,
basically you're totting up how how much sales they did, what the costs were, and you'll basically come up with their financial statements for presentation. And then you're sending that off to the auditor.
yeah, exactly. I was the other side of the table, so we were then, yeah, we were, it was quite interesting actually. I then had the experience of being audited by someone else. um,
Okay,
which
nice.
I actually think, yeah, I actually think that my technical knowledge really improved at that point, because
Okay.
you actually just you need to be the one making the decisions of like what accounting standard to apply, and like
Right.
sometimes defending those decisions to an auditor,
Yeah,
which actually is a lot harder than kind of like reading what someone else's argument and then signing off on it or not.
yeah. Okay. And then you're yeah, as you said, Belmont got bought out by LVMH. So we didn't actually talk about this before the call, but like what did that involve? And like how stressful or like how hectic is that when that kind of thing is happening?
Yeah, it was quite stressful for the business as a whole, and
Mm.
but I mean, I guess I was lucky that I was quite early on in my career as well, so it was all
Mm.
just quite new to me, and I actually found it really interesting.
Mm.
But yeah, so Belmont basically, the board decided to formally put the company up for sale.
Mm.
So that was like announced publicly on the New York Stock Exchange, that, and it basically invited anyone to come and buy the company if they wanted.
Right.
Um, and then so after that happened, there are a number of bidders
Yeah.
who kind of expressed interest.
Yeah.
This is all kind of like it was all obviously when the company is listed as well, it's like kind of all secret, and then you have to do these big public
Yeah.
announcements. So there's quite a lot going on. And actually, I mean, I think anytime a company is put up for sale, when you work for that company, you're going to feel a bit stressed, because
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know who's going to buy it. It could be someone that
Yeah.
doesn't need a finance team in London. You have no idea
It could
who's
be a
going to buy
private
it. It could be
equity
someone that,
company that just rips out
yeah,
costs and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It could be like another hotel company that doesn't need you. It could be
Yeah.
a company that like you don't like and you don't want to work for them. Like, so it was quite an uncertain time. But I did find it interesting as well, because we got quite involved in the due diligence process.
Okay.
So all of the like various bidders who were interested in buying the company, they then put forward like a whole series of like really wide ranging questions. Like we would just have like these lists and lists of all these questions every day to go through and answer.
Mm.
And I mean, this like Belmont has, I can't remember the exact number. It's something like about 40 properties worldwide, and they're in
Mm.
like really far flung locations as well. And the question would be really random, like, can we have the lease of like this safari in Botswana, or like, can we have the...
Wow.
So actually going and then like finding all that information was really interesting, and it was quite cool, like seeing what people were asked as well. So I mean, yeah, so it kind of stressful, but like a really good experience, I think, when I had never been through that before.
Okay. Just a quick question, because as I said, this talk is about LVMH and things. Why do you think LVMH were coming in and trying to acquire Belmond? Like, it's obviously very different from what they do, like watches and jewelry, spirits, fashion, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe just a thought, Lottie?
Yeah, so I think the idea behind it is, so obviously LVMH is catering to kind of like the absolute kind of richest people
Yeah.
worldwide. I don't know what the kind of is the top something percent, but like
Yeah.
definitely up there in terms of like they just everything they do is luxury.
Yeah.
And their idea is that in terms of people with like that amount of disposable income,
Mm.
like they obviously spend a lot with their other brands, like buying like fashion and all the
Yeah.
watches and all the things that you've listed, but they were predicting that people will also want to spend that kind of money on experiences. So not only are you gonna, and also actually with the kind of generational shift as like millennials and Gen Z are kind of spending, they're
Right.
kind of taking up a bigger proportion of like their revenue, that those
Yeah.
people actually care as much, if not more, about like an absolute one of a kind experience that you
Yeah.
can't have anywhere else.
Yeah.
Um,
I
rather
mean,
than
I'm
just
definitely in that
one
boat.
handbag.
Like, I'll get to
Yeah,
my
yeah.
like, I'd rather get I'd rather am I stuck here? Oh, there we go. I'd rather go on I'd rather go on a nice holiday than spend the
Yeah,
same amount of money on a watch.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It makes total sense. And that's exactly what Belmond does. Like the Belmond properties, like the absolute like criteria for a Belmond property is like absolute one of a kind. Like everyone is individual. There's no
Mm,
other like hotel that's like it in, or
mm,
I mean they do trains and cruises as well. They're all just like totally unique, once
mm.
in a lifetime experiences. So I think that's why actually Belmond and LVMH, it was just like such an ideal pairing.
Perfect. Lottie, final kind of question about career stuff, and then we'll move on to bits of advice and things like that. For aspiring Lotties. But like, what did you maybe enjoy and not so enjoy about the roles at KPMG and then also at Belmond?
So I think maybe the thing that I didn't enjoy at KPMG, kind of once I'd been there for 3 years, was just like never really having kind of like a permanent location. And it's not always like a negative thing,
Well,
but
because you're
just always
traveling a lot.
traveling, because you're always going into your clients' offices to go and work where they are. Um, and also like again, you're a lot of the time you're kind of reviewing what other people are doing.
Mm.
Um, so I kind of just wanted to have like, so I mean, yeah, and but as we kind of spoken about, when you do that, you're always going to have to be a bit more high level.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely benefits to that as well, but I kind of just wanted to see it from the other side of like having one company that I was really invested in, that I would really kind of get to know all of the detail and like just learn from doing that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So and then at Belmond, like you seem to enjoy the role. Like you then aren't reviewing people's work, you're doing your own. But then, what maybe did you not enjoy about that element?
No, so I really love working at Belmond. Like it's a fantastic company to work for, and I still have like I left almost 2 years ago now, and I'm like still see everyone that I work with all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really great, and I learned so much when I was there.
Yeah.
I think I mean just like a lot happened in the first few years of working there. Like I was really lucky that I got promoted a couple of times.
Yeah.
When I was there, my boss was like really, really good at making sure everyone had a kind of good progression.
Nice.
And also like a few people left. So I was always doing something new. And then
Okay.
the acquisition happened with LVMH, and then that was like really interesting and everything changed again.
Yeah.
So I was always learning something. I think when we kind of like settled down into the more like cyclical, just like reporting to LVMH every month,
Yeah.
it wasn't so varied. And that's when I kind of wanted to look to do something else. And I also always wanted to do an MBA. So
Yeah.
at that point, I had 7 years of work experience, so it was really a natural time to go and do the MBA.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, Lottie, that's amazing. A couple of just questions for yeah, kind of what you'd tell a younger version of yourself, which basically people on this call. But like any kind of like courses you'd recommend, like aspiring auditors or people wanting to get to finance, because obviously there's the ACA, ACCA, but I'm not sure how many people do that at university or things, but maybe for people in sixth form at school or first, second year at university, is there anything, it could be finance related or yeah, just your thoughts on some kind of courses or things that.
Yeah, no. So I suppose the good thing about going to like a big four company is, like, as you can see with me, I like, you don't actually need to have done accounting or anything before. Like, some people have, some people study accounting and then do the same thing as me.
Mm.
And they probably have a bit of advantage to start with, and then it kind of like levels out as
Yeah,
everyone
yeah, yeah.
learns. But I suppose maybe if I could kind of go back and make myself into a more well-rounded person, I think like just like reading the business pages of the newspapers, just being as like informed as you can be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about like what's going on. Like, read like The Economist is brilliant, and like there's brilliant podcasts as well. There's one called How I Built This, which is, it's a guy in California called Guy Raz, and he basically every episode he talks to an entrepreneur, and like that, like he's done millions of episodes, all of the companies are different, and he basically
Oh,
just talks through like how they founded their company and built it up. I mean, that I
nice.
find that really interesting.
Okay, okay.
um
So
yeah.
just trying to be as commercially aware as possible, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what's going to be the most impressive if you're like trying in an interview. I would say as well, a really good resource is the ICAEW, which is the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales.
Okay.
Like, their website has loads of articles and things on it, and I have done courses with them as well, but I've done those maybe a bit later in my career. Like, I
Okay.
did a financial modeling one of theirs, which was fantastic.
Okay.
But that's maybe comes a bit later.
You know what? It sounds like, because in like my area of like asset management, equity research, and my friends who've done like investment banking, like they all say, you know, if they could go back, we would have done accounting and finance. But like my friend in law and you, like, it makes sense that if you're going to do accounting qualifications or law qualifications, why not do something that makes you more rounded at university? Like,
Yeah, and something you enjoy, like
yeah,
it's something
exactly.
you really love.
Yeah. Instead of doing accounting at uni and then doing accounting after that, like, it makes sense.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's an interesting
yeah, it
take.
really does. Yeah.
Because did you know that law companies, like 50% of their graduate intake is like 50% of people don't do law at uni?
Oh, I didn't know it was that high. I have a friend actually who did languages, and now
Yeah.
she's doing law. Actually, and I think languages was always just brilliant to do as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's always going to help.
Okay. Any personal skills or other skills you think are important to develop? As yeah, for audit, because as you said, it's not just numbers.
Yeah, I think I mean, this is probably quite a difficult thing to develop, and it probably just comes with experience as well, but like just communication and
Yeah.
talking to people, like being comfortable talking to people. I mean, I
Yeah.
hated it to start with, like being really junior and not knowing what I was talking about, and like having to go and ask a client for something. Like, it's really scary. But actually it's a really good skill to develop. And I
Yeah.
think also like not being afraid to ask for help as well.
Mm.
Like, I think, like, thinking back to those early jobs I did, I always like thought I was expected to know everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a bit afraid to ask if I didn't know something, when, like, of course you're not expected to know everything. You're like year one in,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
like with no experience. So like, yeah, definitely just asking for help, and
That's
like
a
you've got people to ask who are there. So I think
no,
like
no,
no one's
those are
ever
really,
gonna annoy you.
yeah. Those are really good, because in previous career talks we've had, like, communication always comes up as like something. Yeah, like people have said public speaking is maybe a good way, or just like doing something that gets you in front of a crowd, or a few people. But then that second one of being willing to ask questions and be just admit you're wrong is so good, because
Yeah,
as you said, you go in thinking, oh, people are going to think I'm stupid, but that's not the case. Like, if people are happy to help, that's what I've realized, that
yeah,
happy to
exactly,
help people
exactly.
who are
You're
confused.
supposed to learn on the job. Like, that's kind of
Yeah,
what career progression is about, that you
yeah,
like, and that's how you do learn. So
yeah. Okay,
yeah, I wish I'd done that a bit more.
okay, great. Um, any books you've read over the last 10 years or so, that you've got a few books behind you, I can see that
Yeah, yeah, these
you'd
are cookery books.
but one of them's Ottolenghi. If they all kitchen books, maybe not. If they're all cooking books, maybe not those.
Yeah, they are all cookery books. I do love cookery books. This one is actually really hard, because I don't like. I mainly read fiction. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a professional one. Just maybe even a personal book that you think would be interesting to make someone an
yeah.
all-rounded kind of, yeah.
I did, because you told me you were going to ask me this. I did have a kind of brainstorm. There is a book that got recommended to me the other day. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited to read it.
Yeah.
One kind of area that I actually wish that I wish I'd done this for A level or just studied it a bit more before. I've never studied economics, so I feel like my economics understanding like is a bit kind of poor compared
Yeah.
to like finance and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone told me to read a book, I've got it here, called Everything I Ever Needed to Know About Economics I Learned from Online Dating. And apparently it's a
Wow.
really, really good way of understanding microeconomics.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't read it yet, but it comes highly recommended. And yeah, I love stuff like that. I can't read like just a really dry
Yeah,
business
yeah, yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah. No, it's nice,
It's
like
engaging.
relating that to something most people know about online dating and stuff. So, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a good resource. I like that. That's unique. Okay, any last couple of questions, Lottie? Any kind of advice you'd give yourself if you could go back? You've kind of mentioned a few things already, but any kind of advice that you'd give yourself back at university, or I mean, yeah, you've already said a few things, but anything else like sticking out?
Um, I mean, I guess the only one I could think of, which I don't know that I'd necessarily change because I'm quite happy with where I've got to
Yeah,
now. But I
yeah,
don't know if and maybe it's quite hard to do, but I don't know if I kind of really thought too much about the next step that I wanted to do in my career. Like I feel like I've kind of accidentally got to where I need to be now. But I was quite short-sighted in terms of like with KPMG, I was like, oh, I find it interesting and
mm,
I enjoy it. And I didn't necessarily like think to where it would lead me. And the same thing with Belmond. I interviewed with Belmond and really liked the company, like thought it sounded really interesting and
mm.
I switched to that. I never was like planning
Right, right, right.
for like where I was going to get to, which like now I'm about to finish the MBA, like I'm trying to do that more,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
just like not rush into something and really like stop and kind of think. Like maybe even just like if I'd looked at someone with like a much more senior career that's like 10
Yeah,
years ahead of me and what did they do
yeah,
to get there,
yeah,
rather
yeah,
than
yeah.
just like what do I want to do
I mean,
now.
this is. I mean, I did not ask Lottie to say that, but I mean, this is kind of what these talks are about because you're like we're like 10 years ahead of the people who are going to be watching this, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
okay, and I think that's I mean, it's incredible. Some of the students these days, like the spring week, like I had no idea what they were. You didn't know what they were, but like
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking, okay, this is what I want to get to. How do I get there? Is a graduate job. How do I get the graduate job? Is a summer internship. How do I get the summer internship? Is a spring week. Like I think it's just like there's a lack of information for like
Yeah.
certain schools and things. Like people just aren't aware of these programs which get you into these brilliant places. Like I mean, for instance,
Yeah.
I had no. This is embarrassing. I'm not sure I've actually said this on any of these talks, but I had never heard of McKinsey when I was at university, or these
Oh no,
consulting.
me neither. No,
Yeah,
I didn't know that was an
yeah,
option.
exactly. But it's like if I knew and knew, you do 3-4 years at consulting, then you can go into private equity or venture capital, things like that. You just having that knowledge is very helpful to plan out. Okay, what do I want to do in my career? So, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, last question. If not audit or finance, I think I kind of know what you're going to say here. But what other career would you have pursued?
I think it would have to be journalism.
I thought you were going to say
um, yeah,
that.
you knew it. No, like I love writing and I love newspapers and yeah, I mean I don't know, I'm probably not a good enough writer to be able to do that. But yeah, no, I think that would have been the only other thing I would have ever wanted to do.
Okay, perfect. Lottie, that's everything I have to ask you. Super appreciate your time. That's very, very helpful. And I'm sure people listening to this would be able to gather some valuable insight. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.